George, one of the brighter of her sons, to a distant cousin of hers, Alistair Corcoran, who somewhat reluctantly offered to pay for George's education. George rarely saw his uncle after that first visit. In due course, however, aged 23 with his degree firmly in hand, he was able to call upon his uncle in his elegant home on Law Crescent, in the shadow of the Dundee Law. He was shown into the dining room, and his benefactor got up and embraced him. The lad had done well for himself. Yes, indeed, it was clear. The investment had paid off. Emboldened by the warm reception and the glass of sherry pressed into his large hands, George hurriedly launched into further plans. He'd been thinking of something in the legal profession, perhaps even a barrister. His benefactor took off his glasses and stared at him. There was a moment's uncomfortable silence, during which George began to panic. Had he said something wrong? His uncle cleared his throat. Had George perhaps considered Africa? Well, no, he had not. Africa? He remembered growing breathless. He'd tried to keep the panic out of his voice, much as he was doing now. Africa. George, I asked if you've any carpentry skills. Reverend Grove's voice broke into George's painful recollections. The Reverend's weary expression gave him away. He already knew George's feeble answer. No, I have not, George admitted. It wasn't on the, curriculum. Reverend Grove sighed. What do they teach you fellows these days, he muttered. Well, we'll just have to make the best of it. I'm sure you'll... Both men spoke quickly, not wishing to linger. George paused. The right-of-way was the Reverend's. It was a gift from Rhodes, the Reverend said, fumbling in his waistcoat for his pipe. He lit it carefully, a thin plume of smoke rising vertically towards the thatched roof of the hut that had served for the past 5 years as the mission school. It was the hut's replacement with a brick and stone building they were now discussing. That was very kind of him, George murmured, not knowing quite what to say. Carpentry? He'd never held a hammer in his life. Indeed. The two men stood for a moment in the deepening silence. There didn't seem to be anything further to say. Well, you'd best be getting along, Reverend Grove said finally. Darkness falls quickly in these parts. Aye, that it does, George agreed. He got up hurriedly and moved towards the doorway. Outside, the shadows were already long on the ground, dancing where the wind stirred the trees, sending their leaves into a whispering flurry. He crossed the patch of bare ground behind the mission, his feet biting into the warm, sandy-red soil, sending up little clouds of ochre-coloured dust. The sweet, thick aftertaste of sorghum beer was in his mouth and throat, his mind too, as he walked unsteadily towards the cluster of thatched huts that marked the beginning of the village. Hamlet? Settlement? Township? Even after 18 months, he found it hard to name it. Less than a village, more than a clearing. What was it? A bird called out and a dog barked somewhere beyond the clearing where clumps of mealies were bunched together, desperate for rain. He glanced up at the sky. Not a cloud in sight. Clear and high, the blue of it, azure, cerulean, Prussian, cobalt, turquoise, stretched to infinity, beyond infinity. It made his eyes ache, dizzy to the point of collapse. It wasn't a blue he could recall ever seeing before. He was a Scotsman. His whole being was finely and permanently attuned to the quicksilver changes in weather that were a feature of his homeland. Clear skies in Scotland were a rare occasion. Usually the weather was thick and hanging, always threatening rain. Not here. Not a spit of rain in days, weeks, months. Oh, how he longed for it, and for the taste of something other than the sour, ferment-smelling pap they made from corn, a tasteless porridge with none of the gritty snap and bite of Scottish oats. Pap and wild spinach, that seemed to be the extent of their diet. No wonder the men, women and children...